Return his hands in mine, and thou shalt see the face of the Absolute. Then shall the holy marriage be achieved. Then shall the divine family born. There shall be light and peace in all the worlds. And Savitri passes on. It is in this canto, it is shown how the Divine Mother puts forward a personality as the mother of grief, bearing the grief of all the world, of all men, giving them endurance, suffering in them, and making it possible for them to live despite pain and grief. She is also manifest as the mother of might, putting down evil, saving the oppressed. But she doesn't have the necessary knowledge. There is the mother of light, a mother of knowledge, who gives peace and light. But she can save only if the earth consents to be saved. All have powers, but they are all limited and qualified. So she says, I will bring him, the Supreme, and fulfill you all. Each one will get what she needs. And so saying, she goes to bring, and in fact to become the mother of love, the mother of grief, the mother of might, the mother of light. All shall be fulfilled when the mother of love descends. Because love is the sovereign power which shall unlock all the gates. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. At first she stepped into a night of God. Every seeker who seeks his soul, who seeks the divine being, has to pass through, however temporarily, what appears as a night, a darkness. The light was quenched that helps the laboring world, the power that struggles and stumbles in our life. This inefficient mind gave up its thoughts. Before that invasion of the night, the mind gives up its restless thoughts. All was abolished save her naked self and the prostrate yearning of her surrendered heart. There was no strength in her, no pride of force. The lofty burning of desire had sunk ashamed, a vanity of separate self. The hope of spiritual greatness fled. Salvation she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. A sacred darkness brooded now within. This void held more than all the teeming worlds. The void, the zero that one enters, is not an empty zero. Philosophers think this is an empty void. The void is a pregnant void. Out of it, millions of universes are issued. That is why he says, the void held more than all the teeming worlds. Silent she moved, empty and absolute. In endless time her soul reached a wide end. The spaceless vast became her spirit's place. At last a change approached, the emptiness broke. A wave rippled within, the world has stirred. She has crossed the belt of night. There was felt a blissful nearness to the goal. And She remembers what she had forgotten in this interregnum. She finds the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul, as if in some Elysian occult depth, truth's last retreat from thought's profaning touch, as if in a rock temple solitude hid, God's refuge from an ignorant worshipping world. That is, God shies away from this ignorant worshipping world and finds a refuge somewhere in the forest in a rock temple, inaccessible to the crowd. That way her soul, her secret cave, lay withdrawn even from life's inner sins, receding from the tangled heart's desire. And as she goes within, she comes across a huge monument, a rock building. And she found herself amid great figures of gods, conscious in stone and living without breath, watching with fixed regard the soul of man, executive figures of the cosmic self. That is what the gods are. Executive figures of the cosmic self, world symbols of immutable potency. They all, the gods in the stone, they looked at her, the life scene of man and beast, and the high meaning of the life of gods. As she passed in that mysterious place, through room and room, through door and rock-hewn door, she felt herself made with one all that she saw. A sealed identity within her broke. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. The gods and goddesses were he and she. The mother was she of beauty and delight. The world in Brahma's vast creating clasp, the world puissance on Almighty Shiva's lap, the master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds that twin regard had made, the adorer and the adored, self lost and won. And again, all departed into her silent self. All this also passed. The gods and goddesses also pass. All became formless and pure and bare. Then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. She passes through a wall and a door of fire, and suddenly she sees her secret soul. Here in this chamber of flame and light they met. They looked upon each other, knew themselves, the secret deity and its human part, the calm immortal and the struggling soul. Then with a magic transformation speed, they rushed into each other and grew one. This is a capital experience in our life when this outer soul meets the inner and the deeper soul. The soul meets the oversoul and join. They melt into each other. Thereafter, the responsibility, all the work is taken up by the inner soul. The outer being, the outer soul has to be carried by the inner strength. The human has done its part, and it merges into the divine counterpart. We'll continue after a break. So we continue after Savitri has this climactic experience of her soul rushing into the arms of her divine soul within. Once more she was human upon earthly soil, in the muttering night, amid the rain-swept woods, and the rude cottage where she sat in trance. That subtle world withdrew deeply within, behind the sun veil of the inner sight. Now, each such experience, capital experience, leaves a definite result on the outer being in the waking self. And here it is described, but now the half-opened lotus bud of her heart had bloomed and stood disclosed to the earthly ray. In an image shone, revealed her secret soul. In each one of us, in the heart, is the half-opened lotus bud of love. There it was open now as a result of this impact. There was no wall severing the soul and mind, no mystic fence guarding from the claims of life. And he describes how this experience has had different results in different centers of consciousness, picturesquely called the lotuses in the tantras. There are in the being of man, the human being, several focuses where consciousness is concentrated in certain special character. When each center is opened, those qualities relevant there, they reveal themselves. That's the meaning of opening of the lotuses. And he describes now the course taken by the change in her being. In its deep lotus home, her being sat as if on concentration's marble seat, calling the mighty mother of the worlds to make this earthly tenement her house. There was a deep concentration asking the divine mother of the worlds to come and dwell in this earthly tenement. As in a flash from a supernal light, a living image of the original power, a face, a form came down into her heart and made of it its temple and pure abode. And when its feet had touched the quivering bloom, a mighty movement rocked the inner space, as if a world were shaken and found its soul. Out of the inconscient, soulless, mindless night, a flaming serpent rose, released from sleep. That is what is called the Kundalini, from the inconscient base. It rose, billowing its coils, and stood erect, and climbing mightily, stormily on its way, it touched her centers with its flaming mouth, as if a fiery kiss had broken their sleep. They bloomed and laughed, surcharged with light and bliss. Each lotus, each center, as if their sleep had been broken. They bloomed and laughed and surcharged with light and bliss. Then at the crown it joined the eternal space. And it describes, in the flower of the head, in the flower of matter's base, in each divine stronghold, each lotus, each center is a divine stronghold, and nature not. It held together the mystic stream which joins the viewless summits with the unseen depths, the string of forts that make the frail defense, safeguarding us against the enormous world. Our lines of expression in its vast, these are our lotuses, these are our centers of conscious energies. And she says, an image sat of the original power, wearing the mighty mother's form and face, armed, bearer of the weapon and the sign, whose occult might no magic can imitate. Manifold, yet one she sat, a guardian force. A savior gesture stretched her lifted arm, and symbol of some native cosmic strength. A sacred beast lay prone below her feet, a silent flame-eyed mass of living force. The Divine Mother is always pictured having a prone beast, full of mass of living force in it, prone at her feet, signifying that nature, earth nature, with all its force, lies at her command. All underwent a high celestial change. The moment she occupied Savitri's body and that energy came up, he says, all underwent a high celestial change, breaking the black inconscience blind mute wall, effacing the circles of the ignorance, powers and divinities burst flaming forth. Each part of the being, trembling with delight, lay overwhelmed with tides of happiness, and saw her hand in every circumstance, and felt her touch in every limb and cell. And details are now described. In the country of the lotus of the head, which thinking mind has made its busy space, the highest center is the seat of the thinking mind. In the castle of the lotus twixt the brows, whence it shoots the arrows of its sight and will. The lotus in the eyebrows is the home of sight and willpower. In the passage of the lotus of the throat, where speech must rise and the expressing mind, it is the center of expression. And the heart's impulse run towards word and fact, a glad uplift and a new working came. Describing the three centers, in the head, in the eyebrows and in the throat. The immortal thoughts displaced our bounded view. The immortal thoughts, earth's drab idea and sense. All things now bore a deeper, heavenlier sense. and every act became an act of God. In the kingdom of, and further, in the kingdom of the lotus of the heart, love chanting its pure hymeneal hymn made life and body mirrors of sacred joy, and all the emotions gave themselves to God. When the love center opens in the heart, this is what happens. All the emotions gave themselves to God. And below, in the navel lotus, broad imperial range, its proud ambitions and master lusts were tamed into instruments of a great calm sway to do a work of God on earthly soil. The center at the navel, abdominal center, which is the seat of proud emotions, proud ambitions, it becomes an instrument for the divine working. And still below, in the narrow nether center's petty parts, its childish game of daily dwarf desires was changed into a sweet and boisterous play, a romp of little gods with life in time. In the deep place where once the serpent slept, there came a grip on matter's giant powers for large utilities in life's little space. A firm ground was made for heaven's descending might. These were the transmutations that took place as a result of the tread of God, of the divine in her being. And further, she still has had to go through an experience of nirvana, the all-negating absolute. She had to, for the completeness of her experience, she had to see this side of reality also. So she says, once as she sat in a deep felicitous muse, still quivering from her lover's strong embrace, and made her joy a bridge twixt earth and heaven, an abyss dawned suddenly beneath her heart, a vast and nameless fear dragged at her nerves, as drags a wild beast its half-slaughtered prey. It seemed to have no den from which it sprang. It was not hers, but hid its unseen cause. Then rushing came its vast and fearful fount, a formless dread with shapeless, endless wings, filling the universe with its dangerous breaths. A denser darkness than the night could bear enveloped the heavens and possessed the earth. That darkness, and then she hears a voice of darkness, a voice to the dark, dumb anguish of the heart. In her own depths she heard the unuttered thought that made unreal the world and all life meant. Who art thou who claimest thy crown of separate birth, the illusion of thy soul's reality, and personal Godhead on an ignorant globe? In the animal body of imperfect man, hope not to be happy in a world of pain. I have created all, and all I devour. I am death and the terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black and naked in the world. I am Maya, and the universe is my cheat. I lay waste human happiness with my breath, and slay the will to live, the joy to be, that all may pass back into nothingness and only abide the eternal and absolute. For only the blank eternal can be true. All else is shadow and flash in mind's bright glass. At last know thyself, from vain existence cease. That is what she hears. A shadow of negating absolute, an intolerant darkness travelled the surging past and ebbed in her the formidable voice. And she waited, only her soul remained, its emptied stage. Then from the heights a greater voice came down, the word that touches the heart and finds the soul, the voice of light after the voice of night. The cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply, a might of storm chased by the might of the sun. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to thy foe. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues and beat with thunderous knock upon thy gates. Thou hast come into this struggling world to aid a blind and suffering mortal race, to open to light the eyes that could not see, to bring down bliss into the heart of grief, to make thy life a bridge twixt earth and heaven. If thou wouldst save the toiling universe, the vast universal suffering feel as thine, thou must bear the sorrow that thou claimest to heal. The day bringer must walk in darkest night. He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? If far he walks above mortality's head, how shall the mortal reach that too high path? If one of theirs they see scale the heaven's peaks, men then can hope to learn the Titan climb. God must be born on earth. Mark this. God must be born on earth and be as man, that man, being human, may grow even as God. He who would save the world must be one with the world. All suffering things contain in his heart space and bear the grief and joy of all that lives. His soul must be wider than the universe and feel eternity as its very stuff. Consent to be nothing and none, dissolve time's work, cast off thy mind, step back from form and name, annul thyself, that only God may be. That is the higher voice. Savitri heard, she bowed her head and mused, plunging her deep regard into herself, in her soul's privacy, in the silent night, aloof and standing back, detached and calm, a witness of the drama of herself, a student of her own interior scene. She watched the passion and the toil of life, and heard in the crowded thoroughfares of mind the unceasing tread and passage of her thoughts. And she, as a witness, she sees everything that passes. And she wakes up alone, full of inner strength. Then the fated dawn arrives, when her husband must die, So she wakes up in the morning, and there is a small stone on which Satyavan has sketched the figure of a goddess. She prays, gathers herself, and goes to her mother-in-law, Satyavan's mother, and tells her that 1 full year I have been here now. I have never gone out in the forest, but today I would like to go with him and see the scene of his labors, where he goes, where he brings the fuel. May I go with him? She says, and she took care not to let the slightest suspicion pass. And the old woman says, do as thou choosest. If in thy wisdom thou feelst that thou shouldst accompany Satyavan, do. And both of them set out. He is supremely unaware of the doom that is coming. She keenly aware of every moment that is coming, passing, going one step nearer the doom. And they both set out hand in hand. He is full of joy that Savitri is today with him. And she knows that these are the last moments. With these conflicting emotions, they pass into the forest. And he tells her that this is the particular tree, that is this plant. He says this bird, he calls those birds which are his friends, and the birds answer. He tells this is the beast and that's my friend, and all the beasts and birds answer to his calls, much to her amusement. And then she says, speak more, Satyavan, speak more, because she wants to take in as much of her words, as much of her voice. And then he sings a song, and then he stops where there is a mighty tree, and he sings a chant of a sage, and wields an axe to bring down fuel that he needed at home. And as he wields the axe, he suddenly stops. He turns to his wife and says, Savitri, this is strange. The pain that the tree must feel when I am cutting it, I feel in my arms. And he holds back. Then again he renews and lifts the axe. But at that time the great woodsman has struck, and the axe falls down from his hands. Savitri, he turns to Savitri, she gathers him and holds him. He collapses on her lap, she sits down. And then he says, Savitri, kiss me. Perhaps death may pass because thou kissest. And as she lowers her lips to kiss his lips fail. He has passed. His face changes. She is silent. Suddenly she becomes aware that they are not two only. There is a third presence, a dire, forbidding presence in the air. The birds have stopped singing. The trees themselves have stopped blowing in the wind. Everything that stands still. She knows that he has arrived, the god of death. Then she gathers herself in moments of crisis, when all nature's means fail. The inner strength of the soul comes forward, and the best in her comes. She unites herself with the divine strength that is hers. And she slowly gets up, stands up, leaves the body of the prince, of her husband, on the floor. She stands up and she sees the god of death, the dark figure. There is no exchange of words. And then he wants to take the soul, the being of Satyavan. But she has held it in her power, grasp, not physical. So he looks at her and says, woman, unclasp, thy husband suffers. She unclasps. He bends down to the earth, and the luminous being comes out of the body of Satyavan. And he stands up, gets more and more luminous as he stands. The dark figure of God stands behind. And Savitri is there. And the peculiar procession starts with the soul, the death, and the human Savitri. They go, she still has her body. They pass, and as they pass they find, they go, the green, the leaves all touch her, and very soon they come into a region where it is a pathless path. They walk, but they don't know there is no path. The warmth of the earth is gone behind, and suddenly there is a darkness. She loses sight. They have gone far, far, and she feels they will escape her. Suddenly she casts aside her body, soars in her subtle body, and goes forward and joins them. He looks back angrily. He says, "Woman, you are human, you can't come here." She says, "You give me Satyavan." And there he begins the memorable journey of death, Satyavan and Savitri. They walk. He frightens her. He takes her into a realm of no man's land, where there is no earth, no human beings, no air, but still she survives. There is absolutely nothing, as if nobody has existed. That's the feeling. And still she lives, she goes, and she emerges forward. He tries to argue, it's no use coming, go back. He says, "But I want him, I love him, I have worked with him." She said, "This is all human illusion. You speak of love, go back, you will have fresh loves, new loves, and in those new loves you will forget the old love. This man, once I am the final, ultimate, everybody, whether God or man, has to come to me for peace. And your husband has come to me, this is the destiny. You also, when you die one day, you will have to come to me. Why do you want to take him back to this scene of strife and suffering? Go," he says. Then she says, "No, I won't go." He's angry. He frowns, and then they further pass. She says, "There is no God really. There is really no earth. This is all imagination." And then he says, look down," he says. And she sees the palaces and the minarets and the temples and the churches all rising, each proclaiming its gospel, that its knowledge is the highest, that teaching, that creed is the highest, and tomorrow they are nowhere. Dynasties, empires, all coming from a distance, rising up, the whole panorama of the earth scene is shown to her. And he says, "This is life, this is the vanity. Where is permanence? Where is that truth here? This is what is going to be. Better you go back. You take boons from me, I will give you boons." She says, "No, I am going to come. I have the strength to come. But if boons thou must give, give what Satyavan would have desired when he was alive. Let his parents recover their sight. Let his parents recover their kingdom." He gives a sardonic laughter. "You want, I will give," he said. You want me to give him an external sight when he has got a fortunate inner sight, which means much more. I can give him the outer sight. Then may they have progeny and children. Yes, everything you can give, but you go back," he says. She declines. And then he argues. There is a long debate, as they pass, when all the existing ideologies, philosophies, the skeptist, the agnostic, and the atheist, all these, their arguments are put forward, and she controverses. And she tells him, "Oh, dark sophist of the universe, you want to slay my soul with the truth, slay my soul with a seeming truth. She argues, and then he feels the ground slipping. And then they come into a region where everything is beautiful, bright, harmony. It is the world, ideal worlds. The twilight of the heavens, the twilight of the earth has been shown. Now the twilight of the heavens, all beautiful, but all is fluffy. Everything comes and everything disappears. She tries to touch and she can't feel. She says, this is what it is. Everything is flimsy. Everything is fluffy. There is nothing concrete. You have seen the earth, you have seen the twilight of the heaven. Why do you do this? You accept my word, you go. And then when he finds that she can't be persuaded, she can't be convinced, and she insists upon her power, he says, ultimately, after a long debate, argument, O human claimant to immortality, reveal thy power, lay bare thy spirit's force, then will I give back to thee Satyavan. Or if the mighty mother is with thee, show me her face, that I may worship her. Let deathless eyes look into the eyes of death. And then Savitri looked on death and answered not. People of strength, they rarely speak. They speak but little. So she looked on death and answered not. A mighty transformation came on her, a halo of the indwelling deity, the immortal's luster that had lit her face, overflowing made the air a luminous sea. In a flaming moment of apocalypse, the incarnation thrust aside its veil. A little figure in infinity, yet stood and seemed the eternal's very house, as if the world's center was her very soul, and all wide space was but her outer robe. That is how she reveals herself. Around both, her light spreads like a luminous sea, an ocean. The presence, and at that time when there is that revelation, there is again this manifestation of power through the various lotuses. Again he describes. Her eyes were two stars that watched the universe. The power that from her being's summit reigned, the presence chambered in lotus secrecy, came down and held the center in her brow. From there, the country of the head, it comes into the center of her brow, where the mind's Lord in his control room sits here. There, throned on concentration's native seat, he opens the third mysterious eye in man, the unseen's eye that looks at the unseen. When light with the golden ecstasy fills his brain, and the eternal's wisdom drives his choice, and eternal will seizes the mortal will. That is what happens. The eternal will seizes the mortal will. The infinite vision replaces the finite vision. Then it stirred in the lotus of her throat of song, and in her speech throbbed the immortal word. The divine speech replaces the human speech. Her life sounded with the steps of the world soul, moving in harmony with the cosmic thought. And then, as glides God's Son into the mystic cave, where hides his light from the pursuing gods, it glided into the lotus of her heart and woke in it the force that alters fate. It poured into the navel's lotus depth, lodged in the little life's nature's narrow home. On the body's longings grew heaven's rapture flower, and made desire a pure celestial flame. Broke into the cave where coiled world energy sleeps, and smote the thousand-hooded serpent force that blazing towered and clasped the world's self above. Joined matter's dumbness to the spirit's hush, and filled earth's acts with the spirit's silent power. Thus changed, with this change effected in herself, she waited for the word to speak. Eternity looked into the eyes of death, and darkness saw God's living reality. And then a voice was heard that seemed the stillness self. She doesn't speak. It is a divine voice that speaks through her. And that voice speaks. Then a voice was heard that seemed the stillness self, or the low, calm utterance of infinity when it speaks to the silence in the heart of sleep. I hail thee, almighty and victorious death, thou grandiose darkness of the infinite, O void that makest room for all to be, hunger that gnawest at the universe, consuming the cold remnants of the suns, and eatest the whole world with the jaws of fire, waster of the energy that has made the stars, in conscience carrier of the seeds of thought, nations in which all knowledge sleeps entombed, and slowly emerges in its hollow breast, wearing the mind's mask of bright ignorance. And the voice, divine voice, speaks to him, Thou art my shadow and my instrument. I have given thee thy awful shape of dread, and the sharp sword of terror and grief and pain, to force the soul of man to struggle for light. On the brevity of his half-conscious days, thou art his spur to greatness in his works, the whip to his yearning for eternal bliss, his poignant need of immortality. Live, death, a while, be still my instrument. One day man too shall know thy fathoming heart, thy fathomless heart of silence, and the brooding peace of night, and grave obedience to eternal law, and the calm, inflexible pity in thy gaze. But now, O timeless mightiness, stand aside, and leave the path of my incarnate force. Relieve the radiant God from thy black mask. Release the soul of the world called Satyavan, freed from thy clutch of pain and ignorance, that he may stand master of life and fate, man's representative in the house of God, the mate of wisdom and the spouse of light, the eternal bridegroom of the eternal bride. She spoke. Death, unconvinced, resisted still, although he knew, refusing still to know, although he saw, refusing still to see. Unshakable he stood, claiming his right. His spirit bowed, his will obeyed the law of its own nature, binding even on gods. The two opposed each other face to face. His being like a huge fort of darkness towered. Around it her life grew, an ocean siege. A while the shades survived defying heaven, assailing in front, oppressing from above, a concrete mass of conscious power. He bore the tyranny of a divine desire. A pressure of the intolerable force weighed on his unbowed head and stubborn breast. Light like a burning tongue licked up his thoughts. Light was a luminous torture in his heart. Light coursed a splendid agony through his nerves. His darkness muttered, perishing in her blaze. Her mastering word commanded every limb and left no room for his enormous will, that seemed pushed out into some helpless space and could no more re-enter but left him void. He called to night. Death, when he finds himself helpless, he calls to night, but she fell shuddering back. He called to hell, but sullenly it retired. He turned to the inconscient for support, from which he was born, his vast sustaining self. It drew him back towards boundless vacancy. He called to his own strength, but it refused his call. His body was eaten by light, his spirit devoured. At last he knew defeat inevitable, and left crumbling the shape that he had worn, abandoning hope to make man's soul his prey, and force to be mortal the immortal spirit. Afar he fled, shunning her dreaded touch, and refuge took in the retreating night. The dire universal shadow disappeared, vanishing into the void from which it came, as if deprived of its original cause. The twilight realm passed, fading from their souls, and Satyavan and Savitri were alone, but neither stirred. Between those figures rose a mute, invisible and translucent wall. In that long blank moment's pause, nothing could move. All waited on the unknown, inscrutable will, the divine will. And there is the eternal day, constant shining of the sun without night. And she is put to a final test. There is a radiant God, a beautiful God who appears and speaks. And that radiant God offers to her the felicity of heaven, the felicity of paradise, the peace of the spirit. She recognizes him. It is the same God of death, without the mask of death. When the mask has been torn off, he is the radiant God, offering her the choice to choose the bare spirit, the unbroken peace, the unending bliss. And he says, "O immortal, to felicity arise," he speaks. And she says to him, "O besetter of man's soul with life and death, tempting his heart with the far lure of heaven, testing his strength with the close touch of hell, I climb not to thy everlasting day, even as I have shunned the eternal night. To me, who turn not from my terrestrial way, give back the other self my nature asks. Earth needs his beautiful spirit made by thee. to fling delight down like a net of gold. She says, earth is the chosen place of mightiest souls. Earth is the heroic spirit's battlefield, the forge where the art mason shapes his works. Thy servitudes on earth are greater, King, than all the glorious liberties of heaven. So she says, I want to go there. I don't want this paradise. Again, the Godhead of the vision, wonderful. He again argues with her, you come, you have this. Each time, she says, in vain thou temptest with solitary bliss, two spirits saved out of a suffering world, to one task for which our lives were born, to raise the world to God in deathless light, to bring the God down to the world on earth we came, to change the earthly life to life divine. I keep my will to save the world and man. Even the charm of thy alluring voice, O blissful Godhead, cannot seize and snare. I sacrifice not earth to happier worlds, because that dwelt the Eternal's vast idea and his dynamic will in men and things. So only could the enormous scene begin. And she says, there is a purpose. I do not want this higher paradise. And then, when she refuses all these boons, all these temptations, that voice says, offers 5 boons, 4 or 5 boons. Last, he says, choose, spirit, thy supreme choice not given again. For now from my highest being looks at thee, the nameless, formless peace, where all things rest. In a happy, vast, sublime cessation know, an immense extinction in eternity, the last sinking of a wave in boundless sea, end of the trouble of thy wandering thoughts, close of the journeying of thy pilgrim soul. Accept, O music, weariness of thy notes, O stream, wide breaking of thy channel's banks. The moments fell into eternity, but someone yearned within a bosom unknown, humanity, her love for humanity. Earth yearns inside, and she refuses that peace. She says, silently the woman's heart replied, thy peace, O Lord, a boon within to keep, amid the roar and ruin of wild time. For the magnificent soul of man on earth, thy calm, O Lord, that bears the hands of joy. She claims that peace for the magnificent soul of man on earth. A second time the eternal cry arose. Wide open are the ineffable gates in front. My spirit leans down to break the knot of earth, amorous of oneness without thought or sign, to cast down wall and fence, to strip heaven bare, see with the large eye of infinity, unview the stars and into silence pass. She is offered the boon of oneness, absolute identity with the Supreme. At that time, in an immense and world-destroying pause, she heard 1,000,000 creatures cry to her from the earth. Through the tremendous stillness of her thoughts, the woman's nature spoke. Thy oneness, O Lord, in many approaching hearts, my sweet infinity of thy numberless souls, give it for them, thy oneness. A third time swelled the great admonishing call. I spread abroad the refuge of my wings. Out of its incommunicable deeps, my power, first was peace, next was oneness, third was power. My power looks forth of mightiest splendor, still into its majesty of sleep, withdrawn above the dreadful whirlings of the world. A sob of things was answer to the voice. And passionately the woman's heart replied, Thy energy, Lord, to seize on woman and man, to take all things and creatures in their grief, and gather them into a mother's arms. She chooses for humanity. A last great time the warning sound was heard. I opened the wide eye of solitude to uncover the voiceless rapture of my bliss, where in a pure and exquisite hush it lies, motionless in its slumber of ecstasy. Breaking the silence with a peal and cry, a hymn of adoration tireless climbed, a music beat of winged and uniting souls. Then all the woman yearningly replied, the whole of the woman replied, Thy embrace which rends the living knot of pain, Thy joy, O Lord, in which all creatures breathe, Thy magic flowing waters of deep love, Thy sweetness give to me for earth and for men. And then after a silence, a still blissful cry began. Then the Supreme Voice, which has tempted her, which has offered her to, speaks. O beautiful body of the incarnate Word, thy thoughts are mine. I have spoken with thy voice. My will is thine. What thou hast chosen I choose. All thou hast asked I give to earth and men. All shall be written out in destiny's book. Be my trustee of thought and plan and act, the executor of my